Thank the World Foundation, Nino, Chaco, Chama, Lilia, and your colleagues that you invited me, and the translator that you make possible that I can understand most about you, because probably you understand English. And I slept only 2 hours because I flew in last night, so hopefully I'm not too dizzy, and please excuse me if I'm not so well structured. So Tama already introduced the ethical concepts quite brilliantly, and I will focus a bit on these aspects of environmental and social justice. Just one, let's say, remark, final previous remark. If you like, my name is Ulrich, my official name, but only my mother called me Ulrich when she wanted to say something very serious to me. Call me Uli if you like. Yeah? In a more informal sector, this is it's more easy. So what I want to do is to outline some crucial aspects of the debate of environmental justice, and then I come to social justice. I will take the example of climate justice, because in Western Europe and in international debates the issue of climate justice is quite interesting. And then I will deal briefly with two tensions, and Georgi also will talk about the trade unions and labor movement, so I will make this in a very just with a brief remark. The concept of environmental justice was born in the 1980s in the United States, when, for two reasons, when mainly radical environmentalist groups called state politics environmental racism. Because if you imagine in New York, in Harlem, where many people with black skins live, there were the bus stations, there was the combustion of buses, there was the dirty hubs of the buses. And they said, this is not okay, that you bring every night your buses to Harlem, you repair them, they restart the engine, and we have all these pollution here. So we fight against this. We don't want to have this racist connotation of environmental stuff. The second aspect, the second birth of environmental justice in the United States was a criticism of more radical environmentalist groups to say there is, in the mainstream environmental movement, NGOs and conservationist movements, they are purely green. They don't deal with social questions. So we cannot talk about the green, we cannot talk about environmental issues when we don't talk about gender, about class, about race, about injustice. These were the two moments of the environmental justice movement if you like, in the global north in the United States. A second very important discourse started, and the experience with environmental justice and environmental injustice comes from the global south. And we will talk, and I'm happy to be here in Georgia to learn, and in the region to learn what's happening here. A thing what Joan Martinez-Allier from Barcelona University called the environmentalism of the poor. He said the poor people are most affected, socially, economically, most affected by the destruction of the environment, because their livelihoods are destroyed. They live from local farming, they live from pure water, they live from fishery. They make their living very close to nature, not in a romanticist way, but as a fact. So Jean Martinez-Allier introduced in the 90s, I would say, a very important concept, which is called the environmentalism of the poor. And I would say this is also very close to environmental justice. So the means of subsistence are closer to people. And I work very much on Latin America, and I'm there in a research group. I will talk about this maybe in discussing in the afternoon and tomorrow. And resource extractivism, the mining companies, the large mining companies, are mainly destroying indigenous livelihoods, the livelihoods. The theoretical basis behind it is, there are of course many differences, I would say mainly political ecology. And political ecology diverges from usual environmental politics perspectives in a sense that political ecology does not ask only for environmental destruction, and then it's argued, oh, humankind is destroying the environment, but from the very first step on, political ecology asks for the question of power. of social power. Who organizes the access to the environment? Who organizes the destruction of the environment? And then we have to talk about transnational capital, financial markets, the urban middle classes in the global north, the imperial mode of living. I talk about this tomorrow. So, the question of power is key for political ecology and for environmental justice. And this is the link, from my perspective, to social justice as well. And Tamar said in the morning lecture that the philosophical foundation is very close to the question of democracy. Democracy is not just elections, free elections, party competition, important enough. Democracy is who decides over the course of development of our society. Who decides how do we deal with nature? Do we destroy it? Do we sustain it? Is it sustainable or unsustainable? This is the question of power and of democracy. And Baku is going to talk about the development model in his intervention. So, if we talk about injustice, environmental injustice, we have to talk about class, about gender, about race, about international relations, about international divisions of labor. Who gets the resources? Who exploits the resources? Who makes the profit? And so on. This is very briefly, of course, I have 12 minutes. This is just a remark on political ecology. So, from this perspective, very opposite to the usual discourse where it's said, the environmental question and the social question, it's so difficult to bring together. Here are the trade unions, they want growth, the economy wants growth, and the ecologists, they want to protect the environment. From political ecology, it's the other way around. It's difficult to separate ecological and social questions. They are from the very, very beginning together. This is, let's say, an icebreaker to rethink the relationship between society and nature. We use the term societal nature relations. It's a not very usual term. I will bring tomorrow a book with me, and you can have a look if you like where we develop it. Societal nature relations try to overcome the dichotomy that here is society and there is nature. But no, how do we appropriate nature when we create mobility, food, clothing, communication, and so on, etc., etc. This is societal nature relations. Do we produce our food sustainably or destructively? Do we produce our mobility sustainably or destructively? Do we produce our process sustainably or destructively? This is the question of societal nature relations, and then I think now it's very clear the social and the ecological question is together. You cannot separate this. This is the perspective of political ecology. So my second point is to talk briefly about one, I would say, currently very important topic in the term of environmental justice. Now, I hope you got it. Always linked to social questions. And one, I would say, very important international movement now is the climate justice movement. And here again, climate is not the 2 degrees, the 1.5 degrees target. Climate change, the problem, the causes of climate change are the capitalist, industrialist burning of fossil fuels and a mode of production and living that is linked to this fossilist and capitalist and highly unequal, gendered, classist and so on, highly unequal mode of production. So, climate justice, as opposed to the, let's say, mainstream discourse of climate change, and I don't deny it, I think it's important enough that we have climate change discourses, but climate justice is the social and environmental justice, if you like, perspective in climate change politics. And I just give you one idea, and since you also are going to talk about the Paris Agreement, and I make it very brief. The critique from this perspective of climate justice, to think together social and environmental questions from the very first step, is a critique of international climate change politics as managerial, as a type of politics which thinks if the international government, the national governments come together in the framework of the FCCC, the Framework Convention on Climate Change, and they will make the rules, everything will be better. No, because they don't deal with the root causes of the destruction. Some of you might remember that in the Paris Agreement in 2015, at the very last day, the lobby, the fossil fuel lobby, was able to to bring the notion of fossil fuels as the root cause of climate change out of the document. Yeah, it was just left out of the document because it's so powerful to dispute. The second is, and I think this is also important within the green context, and I discuss it all the time with Barbara Unmusic, Lily Fuhr and others. The danger of a green perspective that is not linking together the social and environmental questions from the very first one is to remain in a corridor what we call ecological modernization. Ecological modernization means that we might cope with the environmental crisis via a greening of the existing institutions. The state, business, private consumers and so on. And this is again not tackling with the root causes, which is a model of production and living which is deeper. Even the subjectivity, which is deeper than only to say, some green investments, some green rules and laws, and some green consumers, and then we will get it. Yeah? So ecological modernization is important, it's better than business as usual, neoliberal business as usual, but ecological modernization is a corridor which is not systematically dealing with the issue of social and environmental injustice. So, yeah, again, the climate justice movement is criticizing this. I leave it here because I have only 3 minutes left. We can talk about other aspects in the discussion. So, and then I come to two tensions at the end. One is in the abstract, and I will make it very clear. From an analytical and let's say emancipatory political perspective, to bring together social and environmental issues are key. I hope this became clear. However, in the dominant debate, and this became very clear in Tamara's intervention, the question of social justice is dominantly framed as a question of recognition and of redistribution. And redistribution means, in our societies today, we need economic growth. We need a mode of development that grows, and if the cake is larger, we can distribute better. A very typical discourse from trade unions, from business, from governments. So, the distributional justice, the social justice, is implicitly or even explicitly referring to economic growth. We should say capitalist economic growth, profits, accumulation, and so on. And the dominant term of environmental justice, even used by governments, says, no, growth is a problem. We have to look for alternatives to growth because growth is destroying the environment. So how can we reconcile this? And I hope that this is why I introduced political ecology, we can reconcile it when we go deeper. That when we criticize domination, when we criticize power, when we criticize the framing of ecological modernization of the mode of production and living. And what Hans T., a journalist in Berlin once called, we need a red-green. We don't need to bring together red and green, we need from the very beginning a red-green. This is a very, very, I would say, convincing tool. This brings us to the question of human rights, of democracy, Tamara was talking about, a question of sustainability, which is stronger than ecological modernization, which is today the dominant discourse. And then to finish, and very big, because we just started the research project at Vienna University in Austria on how to overcome the automotive sector, how to overcome in the crisis of the automobile industry. I can talk about it later if you like. How can we change society? How can we change a mode of production which is ecologically and also socially so damaging, which is the automotive industry in Germany and Austria? And I give you some remarks, and then Giorgio will complement properly. Usually, when it comes to workers, when it comes to trade unions, we have a separation which we call the job versus environmental debate. First the jobs, first the growth, first the production, and then comes the cleaning up of the environment. And what we need urgently, and this is very public in Germany due to the emission scandal, due to the pressure of China towards electronic cars, to overcome this false dichotomy. And this is not only an academic question, but it's a highly political question to talk to the unions, to convince the unions that we need to reorganize our economy. And I can tell you, I'm very close to the German and Austrian trade unions. It's a hard job. Not because I'm a scholar, I'm an academic, but to talk to them and to talk to their interests. And then again comes back the question of democracy. Because and then I finished, what the management of the German automotive industry is currently doing is irresponsible. Also with respect to the workers. The promise is we need to maintain the jobs in the automotive industry. But because they were so profit-oriented, a colleague of mine from the board of the IG Metall, the German metal workers, the largest trade union in the world, he says the bosses were drunken. The bosses of the automotive industry in Germany were drunken by the profits they made mainly in China. So the irresponsibility was that the managers proceeded with the combustion engine. They were not looking at alternatives. And now what is the consequence? The consequence is that the restructuring, the forced restructuring of the German automotive industry is taking place on the back of the workers. This is their responsibility. The managers always say, we are responsible for creating jobs. But now they are irresponsible because they are creating the crisis. And so, and this is my last remark, what we need again is to question who decides over investment, who decides over R&D, research and development. And this cannot be a management which just looks at profits. And you know that Winterkorn, the boss of Volkswagen, VW, is managed to get into jail. And they were irresponsible because he got in 1 year 70 million euro extra bonus. And the Mercedes-Benz top manager got only 10 million, and said, oh, this is not enough, my work was better. My work was better than just to get only 10 million per year more because our profits were so high. But they didn't think in the workers. They didn't think in a responsible way. They just thought about profits. And so there comes an issue in which we call economic democracy. Democracy is not only restricted to the political sphere. Democracy should be enhanced to the economic sphere. And again, who decides over production? Who decides over investment? Who decides how our society is reproduced? And then probably you have many examples here from the region. Thank you for being here.